On this episode of the Scott Stedman podcast, I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on the Orlando shooting. So stay here and listen right here on the Scott Stedman podcast. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Scott, and welcome to the Scott Stedman podcast. It is the 13th of June, and it is about 4 o'clock p.m. It is a hot day outside, and today I really want to focus on the Orlando shooting. Now, Sunday, usually when I get ready for church on Sunday, I really don't check the news, really don't check Facebook. I just get up, I shower, and really my focus is just on making sure everything is ready for Sunday morning and going through my sermon a couple times before the service starts. So we were talking about the basics and the new series called The Basics, where we're hitting each of the basics of Christianity. Who is God? Who is Jesus? And today was who is the Holy Spirit. So talked about the Holy Spirit and then had a wonderful Spirit-filled service. A lot of great things were happening. Ended up being energized from that service. And I remember coming back home, changing out of my church clothes, and just kind of then I was checking my phone, looking at Facebook, and kind of saw a couple notifications that said a couple of my friends were marked safe. And if you're not familiar, Facebook has this thing where if there was some type of natural disaster, some type of emergency in your area, there's a thing where you can mark yourself as safe. And I just kind of saw that a couple of my friends were okay in Orlando. And I'm like, oh, what happened in Orlando? Well, sure enough, as I did a search for Orlando, the first thing that came up in the news was that there was a shooting at a LGBTQ nightclub. About 50 people were killed. A couple of others were severely injured. And I'm reading this news story, and I'm just like, wow. If there's something that will kill a good Sunday morning, it would be reading this. And I just remember just taking a moment and just praying for the families of those who were killed in this tragedy. And I had lunch with my wife, and we were just kind of talking about things, and I mentioned it to her, and she didn't hear anything about it, so she went to kind of go and read through it. And throughout the day, I occasionally would just kind of just check it, see updates on it. And during that time, I would check my social media, and I just started to get this bad sensation going throughout my body. And it wasn't necessarily the tragedy that was setting me off. It wasn't the reporting that was setting me off, but it was just wasn't even 24 hours before people started to put out a lot of this propaganda out there on social media, whether it was just some of my Facebook friends just kind of airing their grievances or airing their thoughts on everything, or if it was just someone sharing a post. And it just seemed like right from the beginning, there was people who were posting anti-gun propaganda. And then you'd have people who would post stuff that, pro-gun propaganda. And then next thing you know, there's people who are posting things like, wall doesn't sound like a bad idea now. Kind of echoing Donald Trump's policies on trying to keep people of Middle Eastern descent out of our country and building a wall between us and Mexico. Then there's people who were saying slogans like hate has no religion. People were saying that this person had ties to ISIS terrorism, and then I would read things that, oh, the son of this person who was the shooter in this crime said that no, it's not religion. He just was homophobic, and it just bothered me. It bothered me so much because instead of grieving and giving time to grieve as a nation, grieve as family and friends of those who were killed in this tragedy or whatever, it's like we grieved for about 5 minutes, and then all of a sudden we are going to be shooting propaganda, political propaganda, pro-gun propaganda, LGBTQ propaganda, anti-Muslim propaganda, pro-Muslim propaganda, anti-religion propaganda, pro-religion propaganda. It was just flooding, and it was just ticking me off. And it's no wonder that our country, especially when it comes to the grieving process, doesn't really know how to grieve properly because we are so fixated on what's next. We look at our workplaces, and depending on where you work at, if you lose a family member, you may have a week or maybe even a couple days of time off to grieve for your lost loved ones, and then it's back to work. In other places, it's more of like, okay, you have the day of the funeral, you have off work to go to the funeral and grieve with your loved ones, and then after that, next day, you're back to work. And as a country, especially for a country that has a lot of disturbed people, and anytime when we see cases of people who are doing horrible things, committing crimes, committing these mass shootings, or people who are harming children, we look at these people and we say, well, these people have some type of mental disorder, or there's something wrong mentally with them. And sure enough, it's like, well, yeah, of course, no sane person is going to cause a mass shooting. But at the same time, why is there such a lack of knowledge for mental illness? Why is it that so many people don't want to get help? And I can even remember times when I went to counseling and I didn't even have like insurance that covered counseling. Yeah, I mean, every time I go for a session, it was about $50 to $70 per session, which, yeah, that's not great, but even with insurance, sometimes that could be reduced. And even other places, there's free places that do counseling. There's some cities have social services that can do free counseling for people, especially if you're low income. There are other places like churches that offer free counseling through pastors or through other type of Christian counselors that are employed by a church that do free counseling as a community service. And it just takes this whole thing that we as a nation don't know how to grieve. We as a nation don't know how to be healthy when it comes to grieving. And especially even in our news, even in our media outlets, even through social media, it's like something bad has happened. Oh, let's grieve. We'll come up with a special picture for people to put as their Facebook profile to kind of show a grieving for this event. And that's about the extent of it. And then once that becomes, I guess, old news, then we go back to getting riled up on other things. So this massacre is just the foundation for us to push political agendas, to push our own thoughts and viewpoints on certain things like gun control or the LGBTQ population or Islam or Christianity. It's just a nightmare. And frankly, I'm tired of it. It's almost like, why do we just get so caught up in the drama? Why do we continue to feed the machine in a way instead of saying, you know what, I'm not going to feed the machine. I'm just going to unplug from everything and really take my time to grieve, to really take my time to pray and really have earnest and powerful prayers for the family and friends of those who were slain in this massacre. Pray for our leaders so that they know what they can do so that we don't have to have this happen again. Pray for protection for the family of the slain person, as people are probably going to start coming after them and protest them and give them death threats like, oh, your husband or your son injured my kid, so we're going to come back at you. I mean, really, we don't. And I think it's just because we don't care. We only care about getting fired up, shooting off our political ideals and our political voice, and not really care about those who have not even been dead for 24 hours, and already their memory has kind of gone by the wayside, so that we can continue to keep our guns or ban guns or whatever side you are on that fence. So my suggestion to all of this is just this simple fact. When there's tragedy, grieve. If you know someone who is hurting, pray with them, bring them comfort, help them out in any way you need. Don't use this opportunity to start spinning your own political or propaganda force. I just don't get it. I just don't get it. And that's why I'm probably not making sense here, but that's why I just get so fired up. Like, why? Because we love the drama? Because we like to have arguments? Because arguing and fighting against someone who has an opposite view of you brings us so much fulfillment and satisfaction? Because if it brought us so much fulfillment and satisfaction, then at the end of the day, when both sides are happy, then we should be done, right? But no, we're not satisfied because we keep bringing up the same stuff over and over and over again. You know, it kind of reminds me of a lyric from a John Rubin song, Word of Mouth, where it's like, I think the lyric goes, mundane, it's all the same, remind me later when nothing's changed. And it just echoes so much that, you know, it's a new tragedy, but it's the same news, it's the same voice over and over and over again. I mean, Sandy Hook, we're arguing about guns. Orlando, we're now arguing about guns. Paris, we're still arguing about gun control. And it's like any time when something happens, we have to talk about guns. We have to talk about what we're going to do about what we're going to do to stop these militant Muslims. Are we just going to drive all Muslims out of the country, or are we going to do extensive background checks? It's always the same stuff. And it's almost like once we get bored, we have to go and get into this, start dipping our feet into the same old pool again. And it's a pool that's filled with stale water. So again, at the end of the day, continue to pray, continue to show love, and just continue to be understanding, and don't jump onto the propaganda bandwagon, because it really does no justice to those who were slain. It really does no justice to the family who is mourning. All it does is it just neglects them. It puts them kind of back behind the line while this political propaganda bullcrap continues to take the surface. So again, everyone else is shouting out an opinion about this, Orlando. That's my opinion about it. It has nothing to do with the tragedy or the shooting. It has to do with how people's opinions are affecting the grief process of those who have lost their lives. All right. So again, thank you so much for listening. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.